I'm Kelly Andrews and your MC today. We're happy to have you for our supplier matching webinar with NC State's Industrial Expansion Solutions, also known as IES. Before starting the program, I'd like to acknowledge NCEDA's annual sponsors, whose logos you see or will be seeing on the screen. There we go. And these companies and organizations support every component of NCEDA's expansive mission and our growing body of programs. We thank all the sponsors for their generous support. Webinars that benefit our membership, like this one, result from this support. So thanks again to those sponsors. Today's webinar, Supplier Matching, a tool for business growth for North Carolina manufacturers, will feature an engaging presentation about supplier matching from two key IES team members, Kian Ho and Eric Taylor. And this will help facilitate manufacturing growth and innovation in North Carolina. They will guide us through the nuances of supplier matching programs, showing how manufacturers can harness this resource to enhance operations, elevate product quality, and expand their businesses. This in-depth session will explore the no-cost supplier sourcing and matching services, including federal opportunities to help mitigate global risk and strengthen our state's supply chains. Before Kian and Eric begin, I'd like to introduce their colleague and a fellow NCEDA member, Anna Mangum. Anna serves as the IES Regional Manager for South Central North Carolina and will share a brief overview of the IES program and services. If you attended the spring conference earlier this month, you'll recognize Anna as she was at the podium in Pinehurst. Just a reminder again, as Liz mentioned, if you have a question at any time, just enter that into the Q&A box, not the chat box, and we will follow up at the end of Anna and Kian and Eric's presentations. So for now, I will turn that. We will turn that over to Anna for her overview, and then she will formally introduce Kian and Eric. Welcome, Anna.
Thank you so much for the introduction, Kelly, and also to Liz. Hello, for fellow NCEDA members. I see a lot of familiar names on our attendee list today, and I appreciate your time and giving to joining us in this presentation. Let me share screen with you 1 second. So, as shared, we will be discussing a supplier matching program today, but before we get started, I want to share a little bit about who NCMEP is in the context of NC State and IES. For those of you who might be familiar with NC State University and the role and the support programs we offer to manufacturers and also to economic developers, you're probably aware of IES and the work that we do, both with existing industry and also a little bit in the recruiting section as well. You see here a list of our programs in just a brief list here. Our services at IES, in partnership with our economic developers and other players in the support of business retention and expansion, go really in depth into a lot of technical and organizational support. Our staff across the entire state, and I'll show you a general picture in just a minute, have backgrounds in manufacturing and in every space that you see area of specialty here. So as shared, I am the regional manager for South Central North Carolina, but there is a regional manager in every section of our state. And you can please take note of who your regional manager is. We are all located and live in the section of our state in which we serve, and we are here to support you as economic developers and your existing industry employers, primarily in the manufacturing space. We not only represent NC State and IES, we also represent something you might have heard called the Manufacturing Extension Partnership. NCMEP represents all of the players you see in their logos on this screen. I know every economic developer on this call and watching this presentation after the fact is very familiar with our strong players at NC or at EDPNC and also the community college. However, all of these other players and logos you see here represent a collection of what makes up NCMEP. And for those of you who are a little less familiar with what MEP represents, think of us collectively like your representation of U.S. commerce acting and supporting your existing industry in the state of North Carolina. So with that being said, this is a program that's going to be covered today by one of my very passionate leaders at IES and the university. Her name is Kian Hogue. This program and supply chain support has been a key part in her career and also her educational journey here at NC State. She's going to share with you about a supplier matching program that we've developed in partnership with U.S. Commerce and through MEP networks all across the United States. Kian is truly a leader and really driven by supporting our existing industry in the state of North Carolina, and doing so with the access and the passion of the data we have and potential partnerships we can grow with you. So with that being said, Kian, if you'll turn your mic and your camera on. Wonderful. I'll let you take it from here and share a little bit more about the program overview and your role at IES.
Thank you, Anna, for the wonderful introduction. And really briefly, I want Eric Taylor, my colleague on the supplier matching program, to introduce himself as well. Eric, will you turn on, I felt like a little bit on the game show. Will you turn on your camera?
Good afternoon, everyone.
Great. So thank you for attending this webinar, and really briefly, I'm going to go over the program overview, the resources that we have available, a few takeaways, and then very importantly, how you can help us, and then any questions and answers that you may have. So Anna, next slide, please.
It may be a little delayed. There we go.
So I know that it's not a surprise to you all that our emphasis on manufacturing, especially within North Carolina, but I just wanted to go over some data that we've put together recently because I'm a data person. So first of all, in North Carolina, we have 11,300 manufacturing establishments, which makes us, gives us a ranking of 8th in the nation. But we're also first in the Southeast for manufacturing. And for employment, we employ 471,500 in manufacturing in North Carolina, which makes us the 3rd highest employer in the state. For GDP at the state level, manufacturing contributes 16% of the state's GDP and contributes to the nation 3.7% of the manufacturing GDP. And for weekly wages, the average is about $1,329, and which equates to around $33 an hour at the state level. And for size, you hear a lot of these are small manufacturers, and that is borne out by the data because 91% of these 11,300 manufacturers have fewer than 100 employees, and most of them would actually have fewer than 50 employees. So it goes to show that yes, manufacturing remains hugely important to North Carolina, which is in the nation, and that is a key reason why we're focusing on our supply chain efforts and bolstering the domestic supply chain. But also I wanted to talk a little bit about the subsectors. So just looking at the data, these will come as a surprise to you in your regions and counties across the state. The top 3 as far as the number of establishments are fabricated metal, food, and printing and related. And that one's interesting because it has grown. It has increased in the number of establishments over the last few years. And for the employment, the largest subsector employments come from food and chemical, and those have remained number 1 and number 2 for the last, I would say, at least 10 years, and then fabricated metal. And those statistics come from the Bureau of Labor Statistics and the Bureau of Economic Analysis, and I could talk all day about them. Next slide, please. So here it is, it's 2024, and we're still talking about supply chain. And sometimes we hear in the media, when we hear other economic forecasts that, well, domestically, the supply chain, it's improving, it's healthy. Do we even need to worry about it anymore? And as we learned, first of all, from COVID that supply chain, at the very least, we need to keep an eye on it. But there is more to it than that. So for example, one big area is because of globalization. We are a we're a country in a global world now. Our businesses, we're all global. Many of the companies that are headquartered here are from Europe or Asia. But there remains a lot of political unrest overseas. Of course, we have natural disasters. And then some of our other federal agencies, such as the Department of Defense, when they think about the relationships that we have with some of our global companies in global areas, they're thinking about, well, what does this mean for, say, the defense industrial base, and who's making our weapon systems and the other systems that we use to defend the country. And so they're thinking in terms of, well, globalization, that remains something we're going to need to keep an eye on when it comes to our supply chain. As well as there are a variety of other variables that are now involved. We are aware, I'd say over the last 5 years, especially thanks to COVID, more and more about what actually goes into the products and goods that we buy. We're aware of where they come from, we're aware of the working conditions, we're aware of any living wages, and so it becomes harder for us to ignore that perhaps an $8 t-shirt isn't really an $8 t-shirt, that there's a lot more that goes into it. And that's the same for any product that we may buy that comes from overseas or even perhaps domestically. And the brands, the large brands, are very aware of this as well. And they are very, very risk averse, and they're very concerned about the perception in the marketplace of any negative perception around their brands. So they themselves are looking to mitigate any risk to their supply chain, any risk to the perception of their brand. And so all of this together, it comes to risk mitigation. So first of all, on a global scale, because we hear about transportation disruptions all the time, excuse me, in various canals, various transportation issues, but we also hear about it domestically. Before this week, the examples that I would have given would have been, say, maybe transportation costs that come from as we're getting things in, or from different parts of the country. But now, after the tragedy in Baltimore, that brings it to our awareness even more that domestically we are not spared from these risks. And if we have, say, one factory that's producing all these goods and we don't have any supplier differentiation, it could be a big problem. Right now, it looks like a lot of the logistics issues will come out of the Baltimore tragedy with that bridge, but we don't still know exactly how that's going to unfold. But again, it's about risk mitigation. If you put all your eggs in one basket, that could be a problem. And a lot of companies are beginning to look. It may cost more, but if they have a facility or a factory in a different part of the country or in the United States in general, that might help offset some of that risk to keep the supply chain vibrant and to make sure that things can get to where they need to go. And also, it's a competitive differentiator, as the interest rates remain high. And so a lot of companies, as they begin to look towards where they're going to be spending their money, they're thinking about, well, I can't, credit is tight, where am I going to spend the money? And it can become a competitive differentiator for a lot of our manufacturers to be located in the United States, to be able to say, yes, you may pay a little bit more for this item, but think about the quality that's involved in producing this, that you can count on. The fact that it's very easy to get us on the phone if there's a problem, or to email us if there's a problem. And then of course the transportation costs in general. It's not coming from overseas. It's not coming, it can get to the consumer or the further up the supply chain much more easily than it could before. So we think that this could be a competitive differentiator. Next, please. So all that data aside, to sort of provide a framework for this, just a little bit briefly about the program background. It is funded by NIST MEP, and the whole point of this program is to bolster and strengthen our domestic supply chains. The first funding for this program, it came down and it started in June 2023. It's going to go through May 2025, but we're also seeing this here as almost like seed money. This is something we've done a lot of supply chain work for years. This is something we will continue to do. This has just provided us with the funding to dedicate to really strengthening our own resources to help North Carolina manufacturers when it comes to their supply chain needs. And it's also a free or no cost program. So the work that we do for you on behalf of the companies to help them make matches and to become part of the supply chains, it's free and no cost. It's just our time and our enthusiasm. And it's also a high profile program. There are a lot of eyes on this program to see, is it possible that we can continue to strengthen and bolster the supply chains domestically? Is it possible that we could bring back some manufacturing that has moved overseas? And at the end of this initial funding, there will be reports that we contribute to show the outcomes of this program. So there are a lot of eyes watching this. Next, please. So the program areas are supplier scouting and matching, That is probably 75%, 80% of what the funding we've received focuses on. The next one would be our supplier database. And I'm going to focus the rest of the presentation on those two areas exclusively, but we also are trying to gain an understanding of the supply chains within the state through mapping certain supply chains, and then also being able to work with manufacturers to help them to do needs assessment on their supply chains. Where are their difficulties? Where are their gaps? How can we help them improve? Could technology make a difference? So just any way that we can help understand what their current needs are and then to help them improve. And so who is doing all this? We must have a staff of thousands, right? No. So the NCEDA supplier matching team, Eric said hello, and he'll be on a little bit later. I am part of this, and then we also have an intern who's helping us do some research, but also the other NCEDA partners, EDP&C, the community college system, all of our partners, but also you. We're counting on you to help us with this, and we'll talk a little bit more about that at the very end of the presentation. Next. All right, so the supplier matching program. So I wanted to talk a little bit about some of the industries that are served by the supplier matching program, and it really is what it says. Someone has a need, and someone may have the ability to meet that need. And those opportunities can come from a manufacturer in another state, or it could come from a manufacturer in North Carolina. Now, we are obviously focused on North Carolina. We want to have our companies to have, at the very least, the first opportunity at any opportunities that come our way. But ultimately, at the end of the day, we want them to be found domestically. So if a company already exists in North Carolina, some of the opportunities, again, are these state or national opportunities from all over the nation, from within North Carolina. Some of them, most of them are business-to-business opportunities. So they will be making a part that goes into another larger part that goes, we don't know. We've heard stories of people being audited and they found that their parts were in the space station. We just don't know. Also, we do have quite a few companies who are looking to reshore their facilities back to North Carolina, or to reshore certain product lines back to North Carolina. And so they themselves are looking for suppliers from the existing industries to offset their reliance on overseas manufacturing. We also have a number of manufacturers who don't exactly know what kinds of opportunities they want to do, but they have excess capacity. And so they're approaching us about, I have this capacity, this is the equipment I have, and we would like to become a supplier. So can you help us find an opportunity? And we'll meet with them and we'll work with them to flesh out exactly what their capabilities are, and we'll put them, we'll make sure that they're sent any opportunities that come our way. And then also federal procurement. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about that on the next slide, but we do have quite a few federal agencies that are going through this process as well, needing suppliers. Now on the new industry side, also we have reshoring. If it's not a product line, we have companies who are saying, I'm just going to move everything back. I bought facilities in Europe and in Asia, and I've decided I want to move them all to the United States. And so this is a case where they're going to be building a facility or buying a facility, and they're going to need workers, they're going to need a full supply chain. So we're going to help them. We can help them with that. And then also, it's a recruiting or an economic development tool. We've been approached by a few other regional economic developers in the last few months because there was a company that is looking to locate within North Carolina, a few companies actually, and they were very curious about the supplier base here. They want to know if I'm thinking about a certain region in the state, what kind of capabilities exist here. They're using that as part of their decision-making ability. We know that in the past, some of the opportunities that the state has lost out on was one reason given was because there wasn't really visibility into the supply chain that existed within the state. They didn't know where some of the suppliers were, the capabilities. And we are now able to provide that kind of information. And so it can be about a very valuable part of a recruiting effort for a company who's looking to locate within North Carolina. So next, please. So as part of our participation in this program, all the federal agencies have to go through this. They have to use us, our national network, to help scout. And I honestly had no idea. We've worked with DoD clients, but I honestly had no idea how much procurement the federal government does, the various agencies. And what I have on this slide, these are just a few of the agencies who have requested assistance to help for us to go through and try to help them find a domestic supplier. Everyone from the EPA, we have energy, commerce, Department of Defense, Health and Human Services, the National Weather Service, and NOAA, the Department of the Interior. So, and these are just the ones that we know of in the last few months. There will probably be more. But as I said, thanks to the Build America, Buy America Act and the requirements that are specified within that act, these agencies must go through our national process to have us attempt to make a due diligence at scouting for them before they can obtain any kind of waiver to purchase it somewhere else. So there's a lot of opportunity here for a lot of North Carolina's manufacturers, and we can also help them to become part of this procurement process to obtain the necessary codes that they need to change in the registrations. Next. So I promise you that this is a very, very easy process. It roughly goes like this. We'll receive an inquiry, either it's from a manufacturer coming directly to us within the state or from one of our other national network members. And with that inquiry will come a request form, and I'll show you that in a moment, but it just lists what needs to be produced, certain specifications about what needs to be produced, time frame, the cost per unit, any packaging requirements. So from this, then we can begin to pass it out to our partners, pass it out to anyone. We put it on our website, we email it, we basically anywhere we can get the word out that there is this opportunity to produce this product. And then we will rely on our partners to bring potential manufacturers to us, for us to connect to the requester, or we ourselves will be doing our own research and vetting them. And there's a lot of sort of behind the scenes iterative work that goes on because we're obtaining clients who might be able to fulfill this need. We're vetting them, making sure that they do meet certain specifications. We're talking back and forth with the initial requester to make sure that we understand their requirements or what they think of this one if they want to proceed. There are a lot of conversations and matchmaking. And ultimately, the hope is that we will be able to make a match between the requester and a supplier in North Carolina to help fulfill this need. Or maybe there isn't a match to be made, and that gives us useful information as well. Are there capabilities that we need to perhaps think about growing within the state? Or is there something perhaps about the transportation infrastructure that we may need to work with other state agencies on? So all the information is good. Our focus is, of course, on making a match for the North Carolina manufacturers. And so for a little bit more information on this, the timeline for this, it does not go on indefinitely. We have a fairly short turnaround of between 14 days to 30 days. We do understand, and we do have opportunities that take a little bit longer because some people just have longer procurement times. But the goal is that this is not something that is just going to linger. The goal is to go in, obtain the request, talk with the client, try to find potential suppliers, vet them, and make this happen because we understand that everyone's time is valuable and we don't want this to stretch on. We at NCEDA, as part of the supplier matching team, we can be as involved as you need us to be, as the clients need us to be. We can do hand-holding, we can set up all the appointments and be part of the meetings. We can facilitate the conversations back and forth, or if you prefer that the potential supplier's name be passed along and then us step out, we can do that too. We're very flexible. We're here to meet the needs of the manufacturers in whatever way that they prefer. All inquiries are welcome. We actually get quite a few inquiries from startups as well as larger established businesses. And so it doesn't matter necessarily the volume that they're looking for. It doesn't matter even the amount that they're looking if they have excess capacity. We welcome all inquiries so that we can try to help. And I promise you, this is a very simple process. It is not a long drawn out process. The steps are simple. We get information in and requests in and pass it out, and then we match. We do research and we try to match. At the end of the day, that's really all there is to it. Eric, you have been highly involved with the supplier matching process. Did you want to say anything about what you've learned or how you approach supplier matching?
Yes, thank you. I would say the program itself, it requires, I've just lost my word that I want to say. I apologize. It requires everybody to basically be engaged on it. It needs to be something I'm using this word a lot now in a lot of meetings, a sense of urgency, because we're right here and we're in a competitive zone within the United States and everything that's going on. things that I've learned is that we have found out that our infrastructure do have some vulnerabilities in it because we have been relying on offshoring a lot of our manufacturing and supplying process. But then with the data that we're getting from this, we're finding out where the holes and the gaps are, and we're trying to right now plug it. As Kian talked about the government agencies, they're basically, the BABA requires them to have to use U.S. sources for their items. If there's not a U.S. source, it has to be pretty much a waiver done, and then it has to be pretty much going back out offshore for that item. But it allows the government to know, hey, we do have a problem here. We need to create a demand for it. And once we create a demand for it, then we can actually, a supplier can jump on board and then realize that they can fill the gap right there. Instead of it going offshore, it can keep U.S. employees employed, and also it can take away from stuff going to another country versus us having to offshore and resource outside the United States for materials and supplies. Keeping a close ear on the incidents in Baltimore. It doesn't mean that that area of Baltimore is going to be out of action. It can be a eye opener for the rest of the United States. Right now, I'm keeping a close watch on that because I'm a supply chain guy. The ports on the East Coast are pretty much in a position to step up. It's just not an effective plan of how they're doing it. They're relying on right now rail to become a big portion of the transportation piece to keep the infrastructure within the United States going. So with this program, this is how we plug our gaps and make ourselves more resilient to be able to be more effective as a country instead of relying on other countries.
Great, thank you,
Supplies
Eric.
coming. Thank you. Sorry.
Thank you.
Sorry.
No. Eric works, he is in the trenches of our supplier matching. He probably has 10, 15 opportunities open on any given day, if not more, and they're always coming in. What you see in front of you now is an example of the intake form, the request form that we receive. And as I said, there's information about the type of product that is being sourced, technical specifications, and sometimes we can even get further schematics if we need to, the volume and pricing, and any delivery requirements, including packaging. So this is just an example. And of course, we won't limit ourselves, and we will work with the manufacturer to find out if there's other information that is needed that might be helpful. Next slide, please. So I wanted to show you an example. This is just a recent rough screenshot of some of the most recent examples that have come down from our national network. So you can see that some of them, we see all kinds of requests. They're not just one type of request. We see them ranging from very niche to very broad. So for example, the very first one, the sewn dog treat pouch. Okay, that's kind of very specific, but then further down, there's one for plastic buckets. For the sector, some of them are going to be business to business, and then some of them are going to be business to consumer. I can imagine that the dog treat pouch one is probably more direct to consumer. We have a variety of sectors. Just in this one snapshot, we see quite a bit of interest in packaging and co-packing for food. We have quite a few people requesting textiles, whether it's certain types of yarns or woven fabrics or anything like that. There's a definite need for those. Also plastics, which is also very well suited for North Carolina's particular manufacturing footprint. So, and then you'll start to see too that some of them, you'll see the BABA compliant around some of them. So we are seeing more and more and more requests that are asking for them to be certified to the Build America, Buy America, or BABA as we call it, because I know I personally can't remember if it's Buy America, Build America, or Build America, Buy America. So for BABA compliant, which is a separate process that we can also help clients go through and certify that yes, we are compliant to meet these specific requests. And who knows what tomorrow will bring. We may have 25 more that are very different. It really does run the gamut. So transitioning from supplier matching specifically, I wanted to talk about manufacturing North Carolina because this really does underpin all of our supplier matching efforts. What it is, if you have not heard of it, it is, we call it MNC. It is our online supplier database. It is made up of company profiles of manufacturers and only manufacturers. We go through a vetting process where we rely on various databases to make sure that the company is truly a manufacturer. Now, they do not have to be headquartered in the state. They just have to have a location, or they can have more than one location. And also, we don't differentiate between a manufacturer who, or say, or a retail operation that maybe has a very small area that they devote to manufacturing, or a much larger manufacturer, because as long as you can justify that you manufacture something, you can be in this database. Also, I want to stress, this is free, it's open, and it's searchable both within the site as well through the search engines. And speaking of search engines, a lot of the profiles in this site rank more highly than the companies that created the profile, their own websites. Which gives some interesting inquiries. I get a lot of requests for people looking for employment opportunities or W-2s, thinking that they've gone to the actual company's website and they found their profile on MNC. So it's highly optimized. And we did that because we want this to be open. Other sites that we looked at when we were building this site, and it's been around since 2011, you had to have an account in order to be able to do anything with it. And we did not want this. We wanted, the whole goal was to provide visibility for manufacturers in North Carolina. And it's free to join. And what we do is we also take a very hands-on and personal approach. If you have problems, if manufacturers have problems creating their profiles, we will help them. If someone has left the company who owned the profile originally and they need access to make changes to the profile, we'll help them recover their password. If they have questions about a certain field that we collect information on, we will help them every step of the way. And then we also do a lot of communication with our members in order to be able to remind them to update their profiles, because their profiles are only as good as the information in it, and which then will impact their findability. So next slide. So this is the intake form that we collect. I personally have a strong dislike of open text fields, and so we rely on a lot of drop downs so that we can make it as usable to search as possible, so that we're all talking the same terminology and vocabulary. So we collect information on, general geographic information. Where is the company? When was it founded? How many employees does it have? And then also what industry they work in, as far as their primary industry and their secondary industry, a little description about their company, about the products that they make. And then we start getting into the more specific things, such as the specific capabilities and processes that they use. And we have added functionality recently so that they can keep adding as many capabilities or processes as they need, and any other specialties. We've also changed that list to reflect some capabilities that have become more prominent in the past few years. And then quality certifications. This is a big differentiator for this database, because it is not easy to obtain lists of companies who have ISO 9001 or medical device ISO 13485 or 16941, 49 for automotive. It is not easy to obtain that information. And so this becomes something that as a client will go into and fill it out, it becomes something that can then be searched on. So if a requester says this, or one of the federal agencies, if they say this company, the supplier we work with, they must have ISO 9001 certification, we can go in and search and say, here's a list of companies that have this. And we also collect information on special business certifications as well. So if they're hub zone, or if they're minority owned or women owned, those special business certifications, we ask them to indicate that as well. Next slide. Now, the point of all this is that this then becomes searchable information. So every single thing that you put in your profile, based on location, capability, your equality certification, special business, it all becomes something that is then searchable by anyone who accesses the site. And I also wanted to, you can search on any of these, and of course, your search is going to become more narrow the more criteria that you select. But if you just wanted to say, I want to see who in my region, since you're economic developers, who is in, say, maybe the Lee County area, you can search and you can see who is in it. Now, I want to say that everyone in manufacturing in North Carolina, that we have them self-selected. It is free to join. We will help them and to flesh out their profile and optimize it, but it is free to join, because we felt that helped the manufacturer take ownership of the information if they joined themselves and provided it. So the image on the right is one of my favorite features of the site. One piece of information that we also ask our manufacturers to provide us with is their end market. So we want to know what industries they serve, and that's especially useful to understand who's in a sector, say, automotive or aerospace, because aerospace is made up of so many different types of manufacturing. And so when you see it like this, because you can actually select whether based on the product that they make, or you can do it based on where their product ends up. You can see each pin represents a different type of manufacturing that is part of this aerospace supply chain. That's within North Carolina. And you can obtain that list, and it just gives a really great picture of what it looks like to be an aerospace manufacturing in this state. And like I said, we want this to grow, because this is just a snapshot of those who are self-selected into the database. Next slide. So really quickly, some of the statistics about who makes up manufacturing in North Carolina. As I said, it's been around since 2011. We have about 1,800 manufacturers, which is about 16% of the number of manufacturers who exist in North Carolina. And I, of course, would like 84% more, because I want all the manufacturers in North Carolina to have a profile. That just helps everyone to know what kind of capabilities exist and what suppliers are available. The site itself receives over 100,000 visits a year. We receive over 3,000 inquiries through the site. Not all of them are W-2s or employment verifications like I alluded to in the last slide. We actually do receive a lot of inquiries around, I have a textiles design idea for a bathing suit, or I'm looking to make a certain thing, or I'm looking for a specific type of yarn, or I need someone to help me. I make a specialty salsa. I need someone to help me with providing a co-packing service. All of those come through the site, and we help match them with suppliers who are in the site. We also will try to take them, if we work with them and we can't find anyone within North Carolina who meets their needs, we can then turn that into a national opportunity, and so that they can find someone who can help them in another state. We've done quite a few of those recently, and again, we want to help our manufacturers within North Carolina. Now, the other data, it tracks very closely to what I presented at the very beginning of this, as far as who is in North Carolina manufacturing wise. And this may answer some of your questions about, well, is my region represented? So we have all 21 manufacturing subsectors recognized. Some of them may only have 2, some of them may have 100, but all 21 identified subsectors are represented in this database. We have, out of 100 counties in North Carolina, we have 95 counties represented, and they also roughly track along the same rural-urban divide. We don't have everyone from Charlotte, or we don't have everyone from the Wake County or the Triangle area. We have almost the entire state represented, and then most of them also have fewer than 100 employees. And the largest sector, as far as the number of profiles within the database, is 332, which is the fabricated metal, which again matches the state. So we only want this data to grow so that we can match the state's footprint when it comes to manufacturing. So resources, most of this information is accessible on the NCEDA website. We have ways that you can either find a supplier, we have overview of the program, we have a list of the benefits, we have a link to the Manufacturing North Carolina site so that you can create a profile. We also have an online version of that capability form that I showed, so that if you have a client who has a supplier need and they want to submit a form, they can go ahead and do that, and we will follow up. It comes to us, and we'll set up a meeting. And the same thing if we have all the open supplier opportunities listed on that website, so they can go and peruse and see what's out there, what's available, and contact us if they have an interest, and we'll begin those conversations with them. So next slide. So a few takeaways. Again, the whole purpose of this program it's to build and enhance our domestic supply chains. And we know that is more important. Every day there's a story about a supply chain snafu, or we're still recovering in one certain sector, or unfortunately with something like the bridge collapse. We want to have our strong domestic supply chains. And we do work with the entire manufacturing supply chain. So it's not just one specific sector, it's every type of manufacturing. For our partners, if we can't find it, we have a lot of other partners that we can work with, many of them local. We have other state partners, we have regional partners in the Southeast. For example, EV is huge in North Carolina, and so we have a lot of other Southeastern states that we're working with to develop those resources within the EV supply chain on a regional basis. And then we also have our national partners, a variety of national partners. This is also helping us and will help the state to just build its knowledge of manufacturing in North Carolina. Again, are there capabilities that we're missing? Are there gaps that we're seeing that maybe we need to help a certain region of the state grow their skill base when it comes to a certain type of manufacturing? And so through programs like the Manufacturing North Carolina database and this, we're learning a lot of information that we think can only help the state's economic development, recruitment, as well as retention and developing of existing industry. Again, it's no cost, it's free. You're paying for mine and Eric's enthusiasm and commitment, which is, well, I guess it's nothing, but we have a lot of enthusiasm and a lot of commitment to this program. So how you can help, and this may be the most important part. You also are our statewide and regional resources, and so we would love your help to spread the word about this particular supplier matching program and the Manufacturer North Carolina database, the fact that they exist and that they're here to help. Help manufacturers register on the database. Also, if you think it would be helpful as you're doing any recruitment of new businesses to North Carolina, you can include that you do have access to this supplier information and other information about what supplier bases may exist in different parts of the state. We can get down to the county level, even the zip code level. And then also, if you are out and about working with your clients and you hear that a business has a supplier need, their supplier went out of business, or they don't like what's being made for them any longer. Please connect them to us and we can help them. Or if you hear of a supplier who says, we have this excess capacity, we'd really like to find other revenue streams. Again, refer them to us and we would be happy to help them. So now I'm going to turn it over to questions and answers to Kelly for that. But I just wanted to say I'm Kian Hogue. You've also heard from Eric Taylor, and then I also put a link to our IS regional managers. They really are our boots on the ground for this, and I know that they work with you all very closely and can be your first point of contact if you need or have any questions about this program. So thank you for your time.
All right, thank you, Kian, Eric, and Anna. And we will now go to some questions that we have in the Q&A. The first one I have for all of you is, feel free to answer. Have you considered collaborating with a company or platform like ScoutBee to enhance your supplier database?
That is one I have not heard of, but I will certainly look into it because in addition to MNC, we also rely on several other databases to find information. So I'll look into that and see if there's information and opportunities to collaborate with to flesh out our profiles. Thank you.
Second, is how are professional services handled or addressed in this program? I.e. engineering services, regulatory, permitting, compliance, emissions, wastewater operations, stormwater, DEQ, EPA compliance?
Great question. We have been asked that question for years, and it's always been a goal of ours. We want, first of all, to make sure that the manufacturers listed when we say MNC that they are manufacturers. We don't want the information for those to be diluted, but we do get asked a lot about those adjacent services or who could help manufacturers and work with manufacturers as well. And so we're in the process, and this extra funding is helping us to develop enhancements to MNC. We are in the process of building out that page so we can list those resources for our manufacturers or for anyone who can work with manufacturers to help them. So I would say hopefully in the next month or so, we'll have that available on the site as well. And if you want to be part of that and know companies who are part of that, then please send them to us so that we can add them to our list.
Great, and I probably should have stopped my video so they could have seen you talking. I'm not sure if they did, but I'll do it for the next one and the last one that I have in the Q&A. Do you have an email that you can share with me that invites manufacturers to list their companies on Manufactured NC?
Yes, we do have that. Let me, can we send that? I don't want to say it incorrectly and get it wrong. Can we send it out afterwards as part of the presentation? I just want to make sure I'll inundate you.
Sure.
Yes.
We can do a follow-up email.
Right, thank you. I'll put that information, make sure that that's included in that follow-up.
Okay, any other questions? Oh, I have one more, I believe. What is the best first step for office to take to connect manufacturers with this program?
I would say to have them, one, go to Manufacturer North Carolina on the site and register a profile if they do not already have one. And then I would also make sure that they that they are able to go to the NCMEP website and access the list of available opportunities. And if they have a current need, they can go ahead and submit a request there.
Great. Okay, any other questions? Last chance. I think I've hit them all from the Q&A box. So if that is it, then I'll wrap things up, and thanks again
Kelly,
to our presenters.
Kelly, there's one more question. that
Oh,
just
sorry.
slid into the chat box. I just saw it.
Let me see. Okay, here we go. Is there a requirement or of a certain percentage of North Carolina content?
No. No, there's not a requirement for there to be one for North Carolina. North Carolina actually does not have a specific requirement for that at this point. So no, there does not. There's not a minimum.
Okay.
So, but Kelly, before you take it, and I just want to thank you all, Eric, and I want to thank you all, and Anna, I want to thank you for the introduction. And if you have any questions about the program, we're happy to answer them, and we're here to be another resource for you to use with your clients.
Well, thank you for that. We really appreciate it, and all this great information. You know, we need resources like this in our toolbox, and we strive to, NCEDA strives to keep economic developers' toolboxes full. So we know that the future of our state and our country and our communities are vitally important. You know, and these types of presentations give us the tools that we need for our efforts on the ground. We hope this presentation provided helpful information about supplier matching and sourcing, and you've got some ideas on how to help your local communities going forward. Thanks also to our annual sponsors and each of you for joining us today. A couple of things wrapping up just in terms of future opportunities. The next two webinars are on April 16th with a Legislative 101 session, and April 30th with an EDPNC spotlight on international business growth. We hope you'll join us in person for a networking luncheon at the upcoming annual conference. Our Asheville area lunch will be April 30th, and the Triad area luncheon will be on May 22nd. NCEDA's legislative breakfast will be on May 8th in Raleigh, and the annual conference again is in Wilmington from June 25th to the 27th. Look for those links to registration to all of these great events in the e-newsletter or on the website. There's a lot going on, and we really appreciate your participation. Thanks again to our wonderful presentation today, Anna and Kian and Eric. Thank you for your time. Thanks to our annual sponsors again, and thank you all for being with us. Have a great day.